A warm welcome to this special podcast where today we're going to be talking about the world of conferencing and internal events and showing you how they can actually be made a lot more meaningful by bringing them into the modern era and doing stuff with them that actually starts to produce great results. I'm Michael Jackson. I'm a global conference speaker and I've been privileged to speak in my career at over 3,000 events across 46 or 47 countries around the world. And I've been working on developing this concept of new events with a business partner of mine, Bev Hancock, and she's about to introduce herself.
Thank you, Michael. I think I've been doing this for about 35 years now, and I've been working across the whole EMEA region, working with leaders and with teams to really have the conversations that matter. And essentially what that means, we want conversations that spark fresh thinking, the ability to change, the ability to connect. And I've been working on stage, at work, and especially online, to really bring leaders into a much more connected space. And I think this is where you and I came together. If I think about it,
very much so.
It was about how do we actually make the shift from monologue to dialogue. And we've both been incredibly frustrated with the events that we've been involved in because they just don't live up to the potential of what they could be. And I think that's where this journey started, and it was many years ago.
Yeah, for me, I think it was the case of conferencing really. When it started, which is probably way back in the 1850s or thereabouts, when people decided they'd bring people together inside the world of business, there wasn't really a framework, as you well know, Bev, in terms of the thought process that went into conferencing, other than pile people into darkened rooms and we'll preach to them. And the only way that they could look back and find something that was similar was the Sunday sermon, where somebody would preach from a raised deck in a darkened room. And really, they implemented conferencing to be much the same style, I think, ever since then, all the way through. And when I started out in my career, I kind of looked at this and I thought, hang on, there's got to be something wrong with this. It seems dull. It seems tedious. It's not really working terribly well.
Mm-hmm. I think my experience has been pretty much the same as a facilitator and as a speaker. Getting into the room and people expect you to talk at them. That's the old tired recipe that always seems to have worked. And I think people get into the frame of mind that says if it's not broken, don't fix it. And yet people leave and they don't feel like they've got something of value. So I think what's been so exciting for me is how do we take this tired recipe and turn it into something that people really want? Because there's no doubt that our audiences have changed. If we look at what next-gen audiences want, they want more involvement. They want more connection. They want to feel like they're leaving with value. And it's no longer a case of saying, take a day out the office. They're saying to us, if I take a day out of the office, is it a worthy investment of my time? And I think that's where FIA was born. I mean, it was really about finding a recipe that people could use that would almost guarantee an experience that would fire up your delegates and make them want to come back to your next event.
So you've mentioned the three-letter magical acronym there, FIA. It's a concept that both Bev and I came up with together to start thinking about how we could approach conferencing in a much better way. Where did it all start, Bev?
I think it started as we were going into conference rooms. And Michael, you've always been on the stage. I often spend more of my time in the room, between the tables, having the conversations. But both of us, I think, came to the realization that there was something missing. And possibly what the problem was is that people bring us in too late. They bring us in when they need a speaker or when they need a facilitator. And we're both from the world of business. We're not just speakers who show up and deliver a canned keynote and then leave. We are interested in what this event is doing for your business. So we realized that if we stepped in earlier and started the conversation earlier to help shape the event, that is where the magic happens.
Yeah, and I think you've done over 800 conferences, largely across the EMEA regions in the world in your career so far. But as a conversational expert analyst, if you will, you were concerned when I first met you about this lack of dialogue. And I think that when we started putting together this concept of how we can make events more exciting and called them FIA, which stands for Fuel, Ignite and Accelerate, and we'll go through each of those in just a moment, The basic idea behind it, wasn't it, was that we would bring conferences into a much more modern era, away from that tired old, boring, dull formula that hasn't changed in nearly 200 years.
And I think also we need to understand that the world has gone omni-channel. No longer is it just a conference is in a room and then the audience goes home. They're now expecting to get the message across multiple channels. We now essentially are living in a hybrid world. And when we were all forced to go online, now if you want to go and listen to a really good talk, you can go and pick up a TED talk, or you can go into the speaker's website and you can go and listen to their talk over there. People are saying that's not enough.
Yeah.
And I think this is where what really excited me about our very, very first conversation was that we could now start creating this connection between the stage and the audience. It was almost like there was a disconnect between the two. And I think as a conversational specialist, I think what really excited me is instead of the audience just sitting there passively and just consuming the message, they could now be an active part of it. And from a leadership development coaching environment, I know the amount of wisdom that is sitting in that room. And I think that's what we've managed to unlock.
I think lots of people had treated the audience like a darkened space that they would preach at from this raised deck or whatever it would be, death by PowerPoint. And it led to what we've always called delegate fatigue, where people don't really want to go and sit through those things, which is why they always fill up from the back rows first when it comes to starting a conference plenary session or an event session. Difference between a concert and a conference? You know that at a concert, everybody wants to go to the front rows first. But when it comes to the conference, it's always the back rows and those darkened rooms. And we were both interested when we met up for the first time about changing exactly that, as you say. And it wasn't just the actual event itself. With Fuel, Ignite and Accelerate, really, it was a combination of three things. How do we start to fuel events before they even begin so that people don't come fatigued already? They actually want to come to an event. So when we started collaborating, there was some really cool stuff on that.
There was, and I think it comes down to one important word. We want to not only improve events. I think a lot of people want to do that, and there's been a lot of, I call them islands of excellence, where we've seen people do some really interesting and innovative stuff. But I think that events have the potential to be transformational.
Yeah.
And transformation doesn't begin on the day. It begins with that first conversation and the build up to the conference. And it comes down to the 80-20 principle. If you want to have that priority event, it's actually 80% of the work goes in before the conference
Correct.
day.
And a lot of clients that I work with and you work with are sometimes quite surprised, whereas speakers or facilitators, we go into an event well before it starts and immerse ourselves in it, because the idea really is to align everything, isn't it, with the aims of the event, with the people who are in it, the speakers themselves, the sponsors, the clients, the corporate message. All of these things have to be woven together before they even open the doors and invite the audience in to sit there.
And I think it goes even further than that. I mean, we've both worked in strategy.
Yeah.
And we know that conferencing is a milestone or part of a much, much bigger business story. And I see purpose on two different levels. We've got the purpose of events, and I think that's what event professionals have always worked with. What's the purpose? What's the walk away that you want your audience to walk away? The
return on eventing, the ROE for argument's sake.
Essentially that. I think we ask even a bigger question is, what is the value that this event is going to play in your bigger picture? And I think when we started putting especially the fuel part of FIA together, this is what really became one of the main drivers of FIA. And I'll never forget when I moderated my very first panel. And it was very much, everybody says, oh, just have a quick brief and you'll be fine. And I went, I can't do that. I need to connect with my panelists. I need to know where they're coming from, what excites them, what drives them, what is the message that they want to bring. And that's where we connected to a much deeper briefing level.
Yeah.
And It's grown since then. Now we sit and we work with sponsors, we work with the planners, we work with the speakers, the panelists to really understand the full message. And wow, does it show up when you're on stage?
To draw out the ultimate goals that you can then build into the event itself.
And also the audience interaction.
Well, I wanted to come back to that in particular because, as we well know, working together as we've done very successfully now on dozens of events recently and conferences around Europe and Africa and the Middle East. I think our clients see the benefit, but thinking about it for the sake of talking for this podcast today, we've got to focus on that audience coming in for a moment because they're bored, right? Delegate fatigue is that real. What makes them more excited about potentially coming to an event? The kind of things that we've done, and remind me of a couple if we may. I mean, filming short-based TikTok length, not YouTube length, those are far too long. Short-based videos of speakers that are coming up on the event going, hey, I've got this information for you. Or as we spoke to a client about recently, the idea of getting the chef in the venue to film, even if it's on an iPhone, filming a little bit of the food that they'd be preparing for the delegates to get them more excited in advance. That if you can drip feed a bunch of information to people before they come, hopefully we can stimulate their interest a little bit more about what's actually going to take place in those plenary sessions or in those town halls or in those internal meetings. What else are we thinking about from a fueling point of view?
I think it's really about creating the buzz. And I think what you've just said about the videos are absolutely vital. It's about stimulating curiosity and anticipation. It's actually getting the brain fired up to say, hey, this is something different. This is something new. And you and I spend a lot of time researching conference trends, where audiences are going, where this world is going. And one of the big trends that we have seen is that people are not booking early for conferences. They're booking later and later and later. So the early bird special isn't enough to get people get them through the doors. So I really think it's about creating the content, and this is where the conversation comes in. Why don't you start your conversation with the audience before the conference? Why don't you ask them what they would really like to hear at the conference?
I mean, I'm finding clients kind of look at you and go, what do you mean talk to the audience before the event? Are you finding the same thing? When I know that we work on it collaboratively, but when you work individually as well?
There is definitely a big mind shift for clients. And what I've loved about the clients that I have worked with is that they've had to be a little courageous. And the minute we start talking about it, they go, wow, I never thought about it that way.
Asking the audience what they might want to hear about in advance?
One great example. I mean, we did a conference in Europe in the last couple of months ago where the business objective was to build deep trust with a distributor network.
Yeah.
And that is a substantial business outcome that we're looking for. And just by setting up the conversation and asking people what it is that they want, and then to get those questions in, even if we don't ask them beforehand, if we ask them at the event, is to be able to say, how are we going to find out whether or not those people trust us? Well, can we ask them?
Yeah.
And that transformed the whole event. So it's really looking at, during the fuel stage, what's important to your audience? What do we want to get out of it? And I think the other big element of the potential of the fuel process is that sponsors no longer just want a logo and a banner.
No, they don't.
They want so much more than that. Yeah. And when you can say to your sponsor, have you thought about, here's your target audience. Ask them some questions. Let us give you that data, and that we feed in later in the process.
All of these thoughts, which are revolutionary to some clients, are working incredibly well on the events that we're doing. The other part of the fuel process that I really enjoy is talking to clients and event organizers about the agenda. Because I think as much as it was pile people into a darkened room and preach at them, the old formula of 45 minutes for a keynote, and we'll have a 45-minute lunch, an hour if you're lucky, halfway through the day, and then at the morning end we'll have a tea break of, should we say 30 minutes, and a tea break in the afternoon of 30 minutes. Well, that's never enough, because not only do the audience love when they find dialogue taking place inside an event, the real reason they want to go, remember, is that they want to network with their colleagues and their friends. And if you're trying to herd a couple of hundred people into a tea room for 30 minutes out of a room and back in again, No wonder it's like herding cats when it comes to ringing the bell and getting them back in the room. Give them longer breaks, we were saying to our clients. Extend the lunch breaks. Make the networking section longer. And invariably, what I was hearing when we started discussing this with clients was they were going, well, we haven't got time for that. And you go, well, hang on a minute, because you've got keynotes in there. You're expecting a 45-minute keynote. Why? Well, that's the way it's always been. Well, hang on a minute. Netflix documentaries, on average, are 42 minutes long. And they've got budgets of millions and casts of some very good-looking people. And you're asking your financial director, bless him or her, to stand up there for 45 minutes and talk about Q1 and Q2. It's never going to work. Attention spans, this is that new audience point that you were making earlier. Attention spans have shrunk dramatically. This era of instant gratification means we have to respond through agenda timings and repurposing the entire day. What are you finding in that realm?
I think what I am finding is that it's a real shift in what an agenda value looks like. As you were saying, people seem to feel that if you've got more speakers, somehow it's more valuable to your audience. If we've got more slots filled, we're jam-packing and people feel like they're going to go away with value. And time and attention are the new currency.
Yeah.
And when you have a look at your agenda, people say, well, give them an hour for networking, but hold on a sec. You're getting people to talk for an hour. Is that valuable? When they leave, that was the time that they actually remember. And one of the hardest things about the work that I do in conversational leadership is getting people to understand the value of connection just through simple conversation.
Yes.
And I know how passionate you are about networking, and I'm the same, because, generally that 30-minute tea break, you are now saying to people, go and check your phone messages, quickly check your emails, go to the bathroom, go and get tea, and please do some quality networking.
And go to the bathroom if you need to.
Exactly. And then
network.
And then please network and be back in the room, which gives them 4 minutes of quality networking before you start herding them in again.
Which is why it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And I think that my experience from not only working at big conferences, because I do a lot of work in the organization and online, is that even in an online event, people get more value out of a small group conversation in a breakout than they do having me speak at them for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to come on to breakouts in a moment, because we've got to talk in a few minutes about the Ignite section, about what we do inside the event itself. But around that construct of networking breaks and food breaks, and refreshment breaks, you've got to lead those too. You can't just let people wander out, look for a cup of coffee or tea and grab a biscuit or a sandwich. And let's not even get started on the food. That's not really our realm, right? But normally it's not terribly good for you in terms of what you eat at conferences, unless you prepare differently. But I think it's a case of saying, well, hang on, if we're going to get this done differently, why don't we think about it differently before we even put the event on? And that's, again, part of the fueling process.
Very much so. And it's about what I call conversational design.
Yeah.
You think that you say to an introvert, go out there and talk to somebody. They would rather crawl under the table and sit quietly. In fact, they're the ones who bury themselves in their cell phone, similar to those people who are on the tube in London, because they actually don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've sent people out with just a question. During the network session, go and talk about, we've just had a wonderful keynote on change. All right, go talk about the one thing that's changing in your environment. And just giving them a hook to talk on. When they come face to face with somebody, they can say, well, what's changing in your life? They don't have to think about what they have to say.
Sure. And you can actually lead that in a process outside the main plenary room as well. And I love this idea about shorter keynotes. Let's just go back to that very briefly, because what is the perfect length for a modern keynote? Well, I think no longer than 30 minutes. 20 to 25 minutes per keynote today I feel very comfortable. I'll speak all day if needs be. I haven't got a problem. When I go in talking about business change or the future of an organization, even the plan that I put together for speaking about business change, and I've always been a change, futurist, looking ahead kind of person. If you open the English dictionary under the latest edition, under change, it doesn't say, see Michael Jackson for further instructions. That's not my point. I'm not trying to be the master of change. I want to talk to people about how they can change in their business. And that's part of the fuel process for me up front. When I started working on this before meeting you independently, it was a case of saying to clients, well, let me understand the nature of your business. I want the audience, when I walk out, not to go, oh, that was a great speaker. I want them to go, man, how long has that person been involved in pharmaceuticals or banking or whatever the industry is that I'm talking to? And then I know I've done a good job because it feels like I'm talking about what's there. And I think that was when we met. That's why we had such a meeting of minds, because I love the aspect of conversational presenting rather than just presenting. And as you've mentioned once or twice already, as this conversational specialist, you really understand the nature of how to bring the very best out of people, which is probably why we combine together so well.
Michael, I would agree with you. And I think if we look at the modern keynote, so when you first started off, it was 45 minutes, the graveyard shift, try and get
normally
people.
First thing after lunch, do the graveyard slot.
Essentially, because you do have an energy in the room, okay, and that energy kind of wakes people up and gets them ready for the financial director to come on.
But that's not shouldn't be the point of having a keynote
speaker. It should not be the point. I think what shifted as far as that's concerned is that with so much content available online, people want thought leaders. They don't want somebody regurgitating content. So they want something that is customized. As you said, they want somebody who can speak directly to their industry. And there's no greater compliment to be able to say, how come you know so much about our company?
Yeah.
They don't, as you say, they go away saying, wow, that's really going to make a difference in my world. And then we looked at the time frame and said, let's give them more time to talk, less time for keynote. And then we took it one step further. And this is where the dialogue came in. I mean, how amazing is it when you ask the audience a question and they answer, and then as you're looking at their answer
in real time,
you are able to respond to them. And to be able to a professional keynoter can shape their message and their slides around that to be able to, and the audience
live and in real time.
And it makes the audience feel like you're talking to them. What they say matter. And I tell you what really gives me the aha moment. When you as a speaker look at the screen and said, wow, I didn't think of that. That's a brilliant contribution.
Yes.
What you've done is that you have really then tapped in to that wisdom in the room.
I found some executives working on the stage as well. If they're not the best presenters or speakers in the world, they're in that role because they're bloody good at marketing or finance or operations or distribution or whatever it might be. Asking some of those executives to stand and deliver is like leading them to the gallows normally, right? So we found, and I learned this from you, Bev, which was the issue of saying, well, hang on, instead of letting a well-respected CEO or FD die on stage, why don't we take away the stress of letting them present and just sit and have a conversation with them? And one of the key things that we've now done together a lot, which has gone down superbly well for all concerned, is take the stress away from the presenter, take the stress away from the audience from having to sit there through that, and actually have a coffee-style conversational dialogue, a bit like we're talking now. Dress up the stage in a relaxed environment. Sit down, have a coffee. We've even had events where baristas have brought coffee to presenters on stage, which was quite good because that was a sponsor, if you remember, over in Newcastle, who was doing the coffee for it. But letting people go, well, actually, I can talk about finance. And I could, if you met somebody at an airport lounge, I learned this from you. You can have a conversation in 20 minutes about their entire business. They'll tell you everything you need to know. And there's no need for boring charts, graphs, or byproducts whatsoever. Having suggested that and worked on it with a lot of clients on stage now, there's been some really incredible results from that. And that's, again, part of that conversational attitude that you've developed.
That has been a real transformation for me to see that in practice, because panel discussions for me were always so stiff. It's like you put you can't have a conversation in a straight line.
A bit like the Spanish Inquisition.
It is. And they put 4 chairs facing the audience, and then people are talking to each other like this. Whereas, as we do that airport lounge, and in the preparation phase, in the fuel phase, and we talk to those speakers, and they realize that they can actually talk with the natural power. Because when you say a financial manager, believe it or not, can actually be very interesting.
Sure.
When they're passionate about what they're talking about.
Sure.
But they somehow feel they have to be grounded in the spreadsheet on the stage. Take that away from them and they start telling the story of finance.
Yeah.
And that has been incredibly powerful. And then once again, to have this flow. Do you remember several years ago, one of the first highlight conferences we had with this approach, where the CEO had to address the audience right at the end.
Mm.
And it was because of the audience input that we had gathered through the day, that he'd said to us, I want to see that input. And instead of saying to them what I think I want to say to them,
scrap my pre-prepared slide deck.
I want to respond to what they want to know.
Yeah.
And it landed that conference so incredibly powerfully. And it creates this flow between the audience and the stage.
Yeah.
It's the most wonderful feeling. And it's the interview format and the panel format. And then the magic is, especially in a panel, it's almost putting an empty seat on the stage and putting the audience in the seat and say, now you be a participant as well.
Love it.
Ask a question, challenge, have questions coming in that are moderated and safe, because that is important in an organizational environment, but that keeps it flowing. And now the CEO, instead of talking to the person at the back of the room, they're actually talking back to them now.
Yeah.
And they're able to respond, and the level of trust that builds between management and the workforce when that happens is extraordinary.
Fueling is what we've been developing in terms of talking about how to get a conference excited before it even begins, and how to build in that sense of excitement and everything to it. I think the key thing for me is that clients are quite surprised that we do all this work with them for one price. We don't say, well, you can have this, but it's extra. I've got a daily rate, you've got a daily rate. We put it together and it works out incredibly well. And I think clients have also responded incredibly well to that. But FIA is a three-pronged thing, right? So we've got fuel. The second part is igniting the event, the eye of igniting, and bringing these events to life. We've touched on some of the elements around it, but what makes you most excited, Bev, about the igniting part of events?
There's nothing better than it feels like there is an energy monitor in the room that just gets dialed up. And that when that energy in the room is electric and people are leaning in to what's happening on stage. And the
rather
event,
than leaning into their iPhones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll chat a little bit about devices and how we use them effectively as we go on. But I think it's really that sense of, oh, this is for me. I was told by a neuroscientist once that a brain wakes up when you provoke it or you evoke it. So either provoke them with something they don't know or evoke a future. Think about a CEO sharing his vision, creating this big picture. Now, Ignite has a sense of energy about it.
Yeah.
It's like taking a match on stage and not lighting it. That's a normal conference
that's a normal
agenda.
Event.
All right.
Yeah.
The minute you light that match and the flame takes place, it takes on an energy of its own. And over the years, I've watched conference organizers try and get the next gadget, the next tech, the next big thing, the next trend to try and boost the energy and boost the energy and boost the energy. And although those elements definitely have their place, I mean, I think of some of the lovely activations we've had as part of our conferences. Actually, what people want is that they want meaning. They want meaning, they want magic, and they want to say, this is for me. There's that what's in it for me answered. I
like that idea of the match because in many respects, it's kind of like making the audience come to life and strike a spark within them that brings them up. The power of the crowd is something you talk about all the time. And apart from working with internal speakers to make them feel better, giving them guidance on agenda from a client point of view and all of those things, one of the most exciting things about Igniting is seeing all those matches being struck in the darkened room, basically. And we don't also have to be in darkened rooms either. There's new styles about going outside and doing extraordinarily new idea things into the realm of bringing events to life. But in a more typical environment, and I keep mentioning the word conferences, but this could be a town hall. It could be an internal meeting of 15, 20 people upwards, really, up to 5,000 or 10,000 if you wanted it to go that far. Bringing the audience to life, capturing that power of the crowd. And I think the key to it all, instead of, as you say, these new concepts or newfangled ideas that people try from time to time is, let's just ignite some bloody conversation.
And it comes down to the quality of the person who's guiding the flow.
Yeah.
Energy and flow are twins. So often, and this has really been your space, so you would be able to speak to this. You are often asked to MC. You've got that energy. You keep the conference on track. As we know, you finish within the minutes of closing time and all of those kind of good things, which every good MC should be able to do. But an MC is not a facilitator. A facilitator can MC, but not necessarily the other way around.
Yes.
The facilitator facilitates the flow. The agenda plan that we did in the fuel stage is to be able to say, what's the energy in the room like? Where do we have to ignite? Where do we have to go back? And one of the places that I really see that working is when I'm sitting at the back with the crew, the AV crew, and you're on stage, you feel a change in the audience, and you say, Bev, let's bring up a question here. Let's create a different conversation. Let's shift the energy on stage or the energy in the room, and let's see how we make that happen. So I think igniting is, in that recipe, there are a lot of things. Number one, you've got to have quality. Now, if you don't have quality content, if you don't have quality speakers, your event's never going to be quite there. But I think having somebody who's almost the conductor of that orchestra, who's bringing everything together, is absolutely vital. And I would love a sexier name than conference facilitator, because it kind of almost sounds like a training thing.
It's a struggle.
Yeah.
You know?
And yet I really see it as a maestro who is actually conducting that energy and just keeping that fire burning and making that happen. That is the real ignite.
I've seen so much stuff on LinkedIn around this. You know, what do you call the modern MC? A Google definition of an MC, if you go and look it up, is someone who cuts the cake. I don't cut cake. I facilitate, I stage manage, I manipulate. And I've seen you do the same thing from a facilitation point of view as well, on stage as well as back. But this connection that we've got between the back of the room, engaging, you know, the audience engages through you. We've gotten rid of all that really boring stuff of, let's get a handheld mic and pass it down the rows. And normally when it comes to Q&A, nobody wants to stand up apart from the office loudmouths who want to have their voices heard longer than everybody else or louder than everybody else. You mentioned moderating questions with the audience, and it's all through technology, and it's handheld on your smartphone, on your device. Just give me a little bit about that, because I think a large part of the Ignite process is using what you've brought to the fore, and you're a super user at it, and it's simple, and it doesn't take any more budget than you've already got planned for your conference. We're not talking about bringing in all kinds of strange things. What do you do?
I'm an introvert, so I'm definitely not the person who loves standing up and asking the question, despite the fact that I'm actually very comfortable on stage. It's a bit of a contradiction. So I recognize that in the audience, there is a lot of expertise. There are some really brilliant questions that never see the light of day, because they're not the people who are going to grab the mic.
Yes.
As we're working together, the question was, how do we make this connection? It's all very well saying we want the stage and the audience to talk, but how do we make that connection? So everybody knows audience polling. There's so many audience platforms. The ones that most people would know would be Mentimeter, which is the one that we use.
Or
Slido is another one. So, and a polling platform is normally seen by conference organizers as something to, if you were on Zoom, you would ask people if they were wearing pants. And then some people would say yes, and everybody would have a good giggle. And the conference organizers would say, wow, we've engaged with our audience. And somebody who's worked in leadership and getting people to really have deep, vulnerable, valuable conversations, I just thought to myself, this is not enough. So I looked at Mentimeter particularly. I like the interface. It's just so easy to work with. And asked the question, how could we turn this into a really powerful engagement tool?
Yes.
And really it comes down to the quality of how you use it.
Right. And
So-
you are a super user of Mentimeter.
I have
a
used,
professional
I have
super user.
absolutely loved it, and I tend to break systems. Give me one, and I will stretch it, and I'll stretch it, and I'll stretch it.
You've been working with the Mentimeter company as well over in Europe.
I have done some work
They've
with them.
tested
Yes.
ideas through you. I think.
I'm one of their beta testers. Yes,
Right.
and I absolutely love it.
So it can do so much more than, and you've got the licenses, so you've paid for those, and you can use them at events.
Licenses, and essentially how it works. We talked about technology and people on their phones. You're not going to keep people off their phones,
Especially if the dialogue is boring up or monologue is boring up front.
So let's keep them on their phones. So instead of at the beginning of events saying to people, please all put away your phones, and nobody's going to do that, is to be able to say, let's give you a reason to be on your phones.
Yeah.
And what we're saying to the audience is, this is your voice. You have the option to be able to speak directly to the stage and be heard
And
directly
anonymously.
on the stage. And it is anonymous unless you choose it not to be. And then obviously you would state
As the
that.
user. Yes.
And what the anonymous input gives you is you take away the fear of
Being
if somebody
ridiculed
or if somebody knows that it's me,
I asked a stupid question.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's depending on the environment. People generally don't like putting their heads above the parapet in a big environment. And it allows them to be their most honest. Now, if you ask a senior executive if they want feedback, they'll say yes. If you circulate that microphone around the room, as you say, you get the 15-minute keynoters who are looking for their
moment of fame.
Their moment of fame.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of people, even in a very positive culture. In fact, I remember working with Toyota many years ago on quite a contentious subject that I was working through with them. And in using Mentimeter, I asked them where they thought some of the issues in their organization was. Now, you must know they have a very positive culture.
Mm-hmm.
And we got fabulous response in answer to that question. One of the leaders came to me afterwards and says, we never speak negatively out loud about the company. And it's not that all of the feedback was negative. People could actually now express exactly how they felt. Or if you've got a great idea that you think that somebody is going to slap down, you put it out there. And it's amazing. Even when we've had senior people respond on this, they actually feel like you've given them a voice. And when people are seen and heard, they feel like they're connected, trust builds, connection builds, culture builds.
Right. And the app it's not an app. It's not another app that you've got. Nobody wants to download another app on their device. The web platform that we use for that, which doesn't cost the clients any cash whatsoever, is moderated by you. If people are asking specific questions, you can always sit with a member of the staff who'll moderate those questions before you send them through to me on stage to bring them out, where I take an iPad or a smartphone on stage myself to work with either the interviewee or the stuff that I'm presenting in my keynote. So it's all carefully moderated at that level, should it need to be. But it's not just the audience asking questions, it's the speakers on stage asking the audience live and in real time and helping shape dialogue flow. I love that. And it's a really smart way of engaging. I'm a little concerned about time for the length of our podcast, but thinking about it now, there's so many ways that we ignite conferencing. We should do another podcast just on that, by the way. Let's move on to the last part, because we've fueled it, we've ignited it, we've made people go, wow, this is incredible. I'm actually in the room when I'm in the room for a reason, and I've enjoyed myself and I'm enjoying it. What's the accelerate part at the end? What do we do there?
Well, Michael, when I first met you, I remember you telling me the story that at the end of a conference, they pay the bar bill and the banners come down. You take your goodie bag and off you go home with probably lots of brochures, which you stick in a bottom drawer and probably do nothing with.
Yes.
And it comes back to what we were first saying about the real business value and the business impact of the event. You want people to be able to take value, both the audience and the organization. Now, I want you to think about all of those questions that have been answered, either audience questions that have been asked or word clouds and the various question types that we've used.
All the data that's been captured and created.
The more data you create, the more we are able to use. And data is the new gold. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But even just giving them the raw data.
When you say them, you mean the client?
Yes, the client.
Yeah. Or the audience, for that matter.
I still find that nobody goes and says, all right, let me have a look at this word cloud. What does it mean? All of that kind of thing. And this is where you often call me an analyst. This is where doing sort of quantitative analysis and being able to say, what is the real message here?
Yes.
And when you have data is only valuable when it's packaged and it's consumable.
Yes.
And what we do, I mean, we pull all of this data out, and not only the questions on the screen. If we've got panelists, we've done a lot of work with them. We've got a lot of insight.
As well as the subject matter that's being presented.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We pull it all together and we say, what does this mean? Now, what this does for the various stakeholders, for the organization and the senior executives who've actually paid for this conference, they get amazing data that they can say, how does this impact our decision making? How can we use this in our communication strategy?
I know you call it data, but what you do, Bev, is something quite different to presenting data even in its raw or slightly packaged form. Go on.
You do it in a way that is easy to read, because, Michael, people don't read anymore. You give them a paragraph, they don't read it.
Sure.
People love visual, they love infographics.
That's why TikTok took over from YouTube in terms of watching things. Imagine what's going on in the reading
Exactly.
world.
However, an infographic is vital if it's been well constructed.
Yeah.
And when data is turned into a picture and something that is easy to consume, you can say, oh, I can see how that's going to work. So very often after a conference, you've got a year's worth of communication messages that you can be sending out between now and the next event or into a particular area of your business.
So the client gets an infographic report that we create at the end of the conference, and also the audience get an infographic report of what's there for them and what they should have maybe photographed or wrote down or can build on and respond to.
And the sponsors as well.
Yeah.
And once they've got that, they now can say, what does this mean for us? And what does it mean for our business?
Yes.
And in doing that, we create that report. But then, just like at the beginning in the fuel stage, we had all of those videos and we created the buzz around that. I think that there's so much content that has been generated in an event. And if you've had a good videographer as part of your event, you can now turn those into post-event videos and articles and blogs and podcasts and all of the other things that you need as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's well worth recording even on an iPhone camera if you haven't got a budget for a videographer in the conference. People have always loved seeing photographs of themselves. Why don't you record at the conference 30 seconds of each keynoter as they walk off, or each panel member as they walk off? Drip feed it out to your delegates at the end, as well as giving them that end report. And when we do this with clients, well, something magic happens. Not only does the audience go home happy, but generally we do as well, because the clients tend to rebook us an awful lot. And Bev and I have been collaborating now for, quite a few years, and it's getting better and better and better all the way through, to the point where I think we've got a client coming up, which is our 4th year in a row that we've worked with this particular client at an internal event. It's not even an outside thing or an exhibition or an association event. We'll work at any type, but lots of client businesses bring us back and back and back, because when we do this, it produces results, right?
I think we had a meeting with a client last week who we did a big conference with last month. What they said really stuck with me. They said, you keep us relevant. That's why we keep coming back, is that we help them keep ahead of their game. And that is the difference between somebody who's just giving content into your event to somebody who's actually your event partner.
Believing in it, working with it, developing it, and building it. And that's what Fuel, Ignite, and Accelerate does. It's been remarkably successful. It's not finite, though. It changes every single day, doesn't it?
And every event's different.
Yeah. Built around the purpose of the client and its own individual regard. And that's why, although we're marginally different in our approaches to it, the way that we work, and perhaps I'm more extrovert and you're introvert, but my goodness, when we put the power of that together, some amazing FIA things have happened. Been an absolute pleasure, Bev, on this podcast. Really enjoyed being with you in the studio. It's rare for us to sit down and talk about it like this, but if anybody wants to know more, we'll put our websites up on the screen and you can go and contact us. get hold of us. We'll put up our emails. Have a chat.
I think my takeaway invitation is let's start the conversation.
Let's start a conversation. Yeah, let's fuel a conversation. We'll ignite it with you, and we'll accelerate the value that you're getting as a result of it. Awesome. Thank you for being with me on this special podcast. It's
Loved
an
it.
absolute pleasure to be with you.